My name is Evelyn Marks, and what I'm about to share with you is not just a story. It's my testimony. It's a message that changed me forever, and I believe it has the power to change you too. I'm here to talk about what happened to me after I made the most devastating decision of my life. A decision that should have ended everything, but instead became the beginning of something I never imagined. This is the story of my near-death experience after I attempted suicide, and the message I was given. A message for all of humanity. Let me take you back to where it all started. On November 14th, 2023, I woke up like I had done every other morning that year. But this wasn't just any day. This was the day I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I'd spent the past year feeling as though I were slowly unraveling. The weight of my depression was like an iron chain wrapped around my chest. Every breath felt heavy, every step hollow. To the outside world, I was the quintessential image of success. A published author, a motivational speaker, a woman who had it all together. But behind closed doors, I was a prisoner to my own mind. The pressures of perfectionism, the constant self-doubt, and a relentless gnawing emptiness had eroded me to my core. Despite years of therapy and medications, the darkness felt impenetrable. I had begun to believe the lies my mind whispered. You're not enough. You never will be. The world will be better without you. So, I made a decision. I planned everything carefully. That morning, I wrote my final letters to my loved ones. I apologized for my perceived failures, assured them that this wasn't their fault, and told them that I had finally found peace with the idea of leaving. I remember thinking, this is the most control I've ever had over my life. By nightfall, I had overdosed on a combination of prescription medications. As I lay on my bed, the world around me began to blur. My last conscious thought was that this was the end, that I would finally escape the pain. But that's not what happened. Instead, my journey began. The first thing I became aware of was silence, not the absence of sound, but an all-encompassing stillness, as if time itself had paused. I opened my eyes, expecting darkness, but instead, I was surrounded by a soft, golden glow. It was warm and inviting, like stepping into the first rays of dawn after a long, cold night. I felt weightless, free from the crushing despair that had haunted me for years. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could breathe. I realized I wasn't in my bedroom anymore. I was in a place that defied human understanding, a place of profound beauty and indescribable peace. As I looked around, I noticed the space wasn't empty. A figure stood before me, radiant yet gentle, their presence exuding an overwhelming sense of love. I can't describe the figure as male or female because it transcended human characteristics. I knew instantly that this being knew everything about me, my deepest pain, my darkest moments, and every hidden corner of my soul. And yet, I felt no shame, no judgment. Only love. Evelyn, the being said, their voice resonating like a melody that struck every chord of my spirit. You are not meant to be here. Not yet. I wanted to argue, to say that I couldn't go back, that I didn't want to. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. Instead, the being touched my shoulder, and in an instant, I was overcome by a flood of images and sensations. I saw my family finding me. My mother's anguished scream, my sister collapsing to her knees, and the paramedics arriving too late. I saw the devastation my absence would leave behind, the empty holidays, the unanswered questions, the ripple effect of my choice spreading pain in ways I had never considered. But it didn't stop there. The being showed me the moments I would have missed. I saw myself comforting my best friend during a future crisis. I saw a little girl I didn't recognize at first. Her dark curls and bright eyes were striking. She was calling me Grandma. I watched as she ran into my arms, giggling as I twirled her in the air. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice breaking. "She's the legacy you were meant to leave," the being replied. "But you are trying to end your story before it has a chance to unfold." I broke down, sobbing. The weight of what I had done hit me like a tidal wave. I had believed that ending my pain would free me, but I hadn't considered the full picture. I hadn't understood how intricately my life was woven into the lives of others. "You are loved more deeply than you can comprehend," the being continued. "And your life has a purpose that is greater than your pain." Then, the scene shifted again. I was no longer standing in the glow of the being's presence, but in a vast, open expanse. Before me was what can only be described as a tapestry, a living, breathing work of art. Every thread shimmered with colors beyond the spectrum of human sight. I could see my own thread woven into it, interconnected with countless others. "This is the fabric of existence," the being explained. "Every life matters. Every choice matters. You are part of something far greater than yourself." As I watched, I noticed that some threads shone brightly, while others dimmed and frayed. I instinctively knew that the fraying threads represented those who had lost hope, just as I had. My heart ached for them, but the being reassured me, saying, "Even the dimmest thread can be restored. That's why your story isn't over." The being then showed me glimpses of the future. I saw a world grappling with crises, climate disasters, social unrest, and technological advancements that threaten to erode our humanity. But amidst the chaos, I also saw glimmers of hope. Communities coming together, acts of kindness sparking change, and individuals choosing love over fear. "You have a role to play in this," the being said. "But first, you must return. You must share what you've seen." I wanted to stay. The peace I felt in that place was unlike anything I had ever known, but the being was insistent. "Your time here is not yet. You have more to do." Before I could protest, I felt a sudden pull, as though a thread in the tapestry was reeling me back in. The golden glow began to fade, replaced by the cold, clinical brightness of a hospital room. I heard the frantic voices of nurses and doctors, the beeping of machines, and then, finally, the sound of my own ragged breath. I was alive. The days that followed were a whirlwind. The doctors were amazed I had survived. They told me I was minutes away from death, and that the damage from the overdose should have left me with significant organ failure. But my tests came back clean. Physically, I was fine. Emotionally and spiritually, however, I was a different person. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had experienced, the love I felt, the tapestry, the message I had been given. It became clear to me that I had been given a second chance, not just to live, but to truly live. That's why I'm here, sharing this story with you now. It's not an easy story to tell, but it's one I feel compelled to share. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that no matter how dark things may seem, there is always hope. You are not alone. Your life matters more than you know. And the end is never really the end. When I opened my eyes in the hospital room, I felt like I had been reborn. The weight I had carried for so long wasn't entirely gone, but it was different now. Less oppressive, less defining. I knew I was here for a reason, even if I didn't fully understand it yet. The experience I had on the other side wasn't just for me. It was a message for humanity, a call to action for all of us. The days that followed my return were surreal. As I lay in that hospital bed, recovering physically, the memories of what I had seen and heard burned brightly in my mind. The golden glow, the living tapestry, the overwhelming love. It all felt more real than the sterile walls surrounding me. But it wasn't just the beauty of the experience that stayed with me. It was the urgency of the message I had been given. A message about humanity's future, the choices we're making, and the consequences we may face. One of the first things the being showed me was the truth about pain, not just mine, but the collective pain of humanity. While I was on the other side, I saw the way suffering ripples through people's lives like waves crashing onto a shore. I was shown scenes of grief, anger, and despair, but not in a way that felt hopeless or overwhelming. Instead, I could see these emotions for what they were: cries for connection, for healing, for love. The being spoke to me again, its voice like a gentle breeze and a commanding storm all at once. Humanity's greatest wound, it said, is its disconnection. From each other, from creation, and from the Creator. I saw flashes of our modern world, crowded cities where people passed each other without a glance, families sitting together but distracted by screens, entire communities divided by fear and hatred. The being showed me how these fractures create isolation, feeding a cycle of pain that many people can't escape. My own struggle with depression suddenly made sense in a new way. I wasn't broken or weak. I was part of a world that had forgotten how to truly connect. But then the being showed me something incredible. Every wound can heal, it said, if humanity remembers the power of love. In an instant, I was flooded with visions of people choosing love over fear. A woman forgiving someone who had deeply hurt her. A father turning off his phone to spend time with his children. A stranger helping someone in need without expecting anything in return. These acts seemed small, even insignificant at first, but as I watched, they began to weave themselves into the tapestry I had seen before. Every act of love brightened the threads, strengthening the fabric of existence. The being then shifted my attention to something it called the tipping point. I saw humanity standing on the edge of a great precipice. Below was a chasm of destruction, a future defined by greed, division, and disconnection. Above was a path of light, a future filled with unity, compassion, and purpose. Humanity is approaching a choice, the being said. The direction it takes will depend on the collective decisions of millions, but each individual's choices matter. The weight of those words settled in my heart. I asked the being how we could possibly change the course of something so massive. How could my small life, or anyone's for that matter, make a difference in the face of such overwhelming forces? The being responded with a wisdom that pierced straight through my doubt. Transformation begins within. A single heart turned toward love has the power to ignite others. You were created to be a catalyst. I realized then that I wasn't being called to save the world on my own. None of us are, but we are all being called to play a role. The being showed me how individual actions, choosing kindness, standing up for what is right, building relationships rooted in trust and empathy, can ripple outward in ways we can't see or measure. Those ripples become waves, and those waves have the power to tip humanity toward the light. The being didn't sugarcoat what was coming. I was shown glimpses of a future that made my heart ache. I saw environmental disasters, raging wildfires, rising seas swallowing entire cities, and crops failing in fields that once flourished. I saw people fighting over dwindling resources, turning against one another out of fear. I saw the rise of technology that promised to connect us but instead deepened our isolation, replacing genuine human interaction with shallow, artificial imitations. But the most chilling vision was of humanity's spiritual crisis. The being showed me how people's obsession with material success, convenience, and control was pulling them further away from their true purpose. I saw people seeking fulfillment in wealth, power, and status, only to find themselves emptier than ever. Humanity has forgotten what it means to live, the being said. It is chasing shadows and losing sight of the light. Despite these warnings, the being's message was not one of despair. It was one of hope. Even in the darkest times, the being said, there will be those who choose the light. They will remind humanity of what truly matters. I was shown pockets of resistance to the chaos, communities of people coming together to care for one another, to rebuild what had been broken. I saw families growing their own food, creating sustainable ways of living that honored the earth. I saw young people leading movements of compassion, rejecting the status quo in favor of something deeper and more meaningful. And I saw faith. Not the rigid, dogmatic kind that divides, but a living, breathing faith that unites people with each other and with the divine. This faith wasn't confined to any one religion or tradition. It was universal, rooted in love, humility, and the recognition that we are all connected. The being spoke to me again, its voice filled with both urgency and tenderness. Humanity's future is not fixed. It is being written every day. But the time to act is now. Before my time with the being ended, I was given specific instructions to share with others. Practical ways we can prepare for the challenges ahead and help tip the balance toward light. Reconnect with the earth. The being emphasized the importance of living in harmony with nature. I was shown how disconnected we've become from the planet that sustains us, and how this disconnection is fueling many of the crises we face. Learn to respect the earth, the being said. Grow what you can, reduce waste, and honor the gifts you've been given. Rebuild community. The being showed me the power of true community, people supporting each other through challenges, celebrating joys together, and creating spaces where everyone feels seen and valued. No one can face what's coming alone, the being said. Build relationships rooted in trust and love. Pursue inner healing. Healing the world begins with healing yourself, the being told me. It encouraged me to confront my own pain, to forgive those who had hurt me, and to release the bitterness I had been carrying. The wounds you carry affect more than just you. Let them go, and you will become a source of healing for others. Choose love over fear. Time and time again, the being emphasized this point. Every decision, no matter how small, is an opportunity to choose love or fear. Choose love, and you will help transform the world. As the visions began to fade, I felt a profound sense of clarity. The challenges humanity faces are real, but they are not insurmountable. Each of us has the power to make choices that ripple outward, shaping the future in ways we may never fully understand. I knew then that my life was no longer my own, not in a burdensome way, but in a way that felt deeply purposeful. I had been given a gift, a glimpse of what's possible when we choose to live with intention, with love, and with faith. And now it was my responsibility to share that gift with others. Returning to life after my near-death experience wasn't the triumphant, cinematic moment you might imagine. It was messy, overwhelming, and humbling. Waking up in that hospital bed, I felt as though I'd been handed the weight of the world. Not because I was expected to save it, but because I'd been given a truth so profound that I couldn't keep it to myself. I was alive for a reason. And now, every breath carried a responsibility to live, love, and share the message I had been given. But where do you even begin when you've been to the edge of existence and back? How do you return to a life that feels both familiar and utterly transformed? The first weeks after I left the hospital were some of the hardest of my life. The people around me, family, friends, doctors, were relieved I had survived, but no one could fully understand what I had experienced. When I tried to explain, I was met with well-meaning but skeptical responses. Maybe it was just a dream. You were hallucinating. The brain does strange things during trauma. I didn't blame them for doubting. It was hard for me to believe, too. But I couldn't shake the vividness of what I had seen, the clarity of the message I had received. This wasn't a hallucination or a fleeting vision. It was real, and it had forever changed me. Still, I felt lost. How could I share this message when I didn't fully understand what it meant for my own life yet? I knew I had to start by reconnecting with myself, with the world, and with the people around me. One of the first things I did was seek counseling. Surviving a suicide attempt is one thing. Healing from the pain that led me there is another. I worked with a therapist who helped me process not just the trauma of my near-death experience, but also the years of emotional pain that had preceded it. For the first time, I began to see my depression not as a flaw or failure, but as a signal that something deeper needed attention. I also leaned heavily into my faith, not the shallow, performative kind I had clung to before, but a raw, personal relationship with the divine. I started praying in a way that felt like a real conversation, not just a list of requests or rehearsed words. I spent hours in silence, simply listening, waiting for that still, small voice to guide me. As I did this inner work, I began to feel a shift. The despair that had once consumed me started to loosen its grip. In its place came a quiet strength, a sense of purpose that wasn't tied to achievement or external validation, but to the simple act of being present and open to love. The being had told me, transformation begins within. I took those words to heart, but I also knew they couldn't stop there. I had to act. I had to start living out the message I had been given, even if it was in small, imperfect ways. The first step was rebuilding connections with the people in my life. I reached out to friends and family I had pushed away during my darkest moments. I apologized for the ways my pain had affected them, but I also allowed myself to receive their forgiveness and love. These relationships became a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't alone. Next, I started volunteering at a local shelter. The being had shown me how deeply humanity's pain is tied to disconnection, and I wanted to do something, anything, to bridge that gap. Serving meals, listening to people's stories, and simply being present reminded me of the power of small acts of kindness. It wasn't about fixing everything. It was about showing up with an open heart. I also began simplifying my life. The being's message about living in harmony with the earth resonated deeply with me. I started growing my own vegetables in a small garden, reducing waste, and finding joy in the simple, sustainable rhythms of life. These changes felt small, but they grounded me in a way I hadn't experienced before. As I grew stronger, I felt an increasing urgency to share my experience and the message I had been given. But I was terrified. What if people dismissed me as delusional? What if I couldn't find the right words? One night, as I prayed for guidance, I felt a quiet but unmistakable nudge. It's not about convincing them. It's about planting seeds. So, I began speaking publicly, first to small groups, then to larger audiences, and eventually online. I shared my story not as a polished, perfect testimony, but as a vulnerable, honest account of what had happened to me. I told people about the being's message, about the tapestry of existence, and about the tipping point humanity is facing. To my surprise, the response was overwhelmingly positive. People from all walks of life reached out to tell me how my story resonated with them. Some shared their own struggles with despair and how my words gave them hope. Others said they felt inspired to make changes in their own lives, to reconnect with loved ones, to pursue a deeper relationship with God, to live more intentionally. One of the most beautiful things that has come from this journey is the community it has created. People who have heard my story have come together to support one another, to share resources, and to live out the principles of love, connection, and faith. We've started initiatives to help those in need, to care for the earth, and to spread hope in tangible ways. This community isn't about me. It's about the message. It's about reminding each other that we're not alone, that we're all part of something greater, and that we have the power to shape the future, together. One of the most profound lessons I've learned is that faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about trusting in the midst of uncertainty, about stepping forward even when the path isn't clear. My experience on the other side gave me a glimpse of something eternal, but it also reminded me that our time here on Earth is precious. Every moment, every choice, every act of love matters. Faith, I've realized, isn't just about believing in God. It's about believing in the divine potential within each of us, the potential to create, to heal, to love. As I write this, I know my journey is far from over. I don't have everything figured out, and there are still days when the weight of the world feels heavy. But I also know that I'm not walking this path alone. The being's words echo in my heart every day. Choose love over fear. Every decision matters. Those words guide me, and they can guide you too. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this. You matter. Your life, your choices, your love, they all matter more than you can imagine. No matter how dark things may seem, there is always light to be found. You are not alone, and your story is not over. The future isn't set in stone. It's being written every day, by each of us, with every act of kindness, every moment of connection, and every decision to choose love. Together, we have the power to tip the balance toward the light. So, let's start now. Let's choose love. Let's live with intention. And let's create a future that reflects the beauty and hope I saw on the other side.